Well, hello, welcome everyone to Music is a Journey. I'm Peter, and this is part 3 in my series of 6 videos taking a look at the discography of the band Opeth and picking out my favorite songs from each of their albums. Previously, in the first video, we looked at Heritage, Pale Communion and Sorceress, and in the second video, Ghost Reveries and Watershed. In this video here, I want to scroll all the way back to the very beginning and take a look at the first 2 albums. Now, it is kind of tempting to pick the first 3, and in fact, you can see in this series of CDs that I have, these 3 are all kind of issued as if they are part of a set. However, I always thought of My Arms, Your Hearse as a step towards the next phase, partly because there was a change in the lineup, change in the members, and as well there was also a stylistic change. The first 2 albums, Orchid and Morningrise, these 2 I feel make a nice pair in the way that, say, like Nazareth's Razamanaz and Loud and Proud make a pair, or the first 2 Deep Purple albums make a pair, because they are both very similar, same musicians, same producer, a lot of things the same. But before we actually get into taking a look at those 2 albums, I want to just briefly go over the history of the band. If you want to see a little bit more fun and in-depth look at the history of the band, naming all of the original, the members early on, I will put a link to, I think it's the Quest for Metal channel. They did a pretty good, concise, fairly short video on the history of the band, so I'll put a link to that below. But basically, the band is started by David Isberg. I'm going to say Isberg because it's probably Isberg. It's probably like Ice Mountain. Anyway, in Scandinavian, Swedish. So the band formed, I think, somewhere around the late 1980s, 1989 or so. The name Opeth actually came from a Wilbur Smith novel where naming a city on the moon called Opeth. So they just called it Opeth. Anyway, maybe very appropriate to have some kind of moon connection. In 1990, now looking at the Wikipedia page plus other information I found, it says that in 1990, 16-year-old Michael Åkerfeldt, his former band Eruption, I guess, broke up or fell through, whatever, and so David Isberg asked him to join Opeth on the bass guitar. However, Michael was brought into the band rehearsal without any forewarning to the other members, and they of course already did have a bass player, so the other members were upset about that, and they decided, well, if our bass player is being replaced, then we're leaving as well. So it was only David Isberg and Michael Åkerfeldt who remained in Opeth at that moment, I guess, by the end of that rehearsal. Looking at Michael Åkerfeldt's Wikipedia page, it actually says that he joined Opeth in '89 on keyboards originally and then switched to bass in '91. However, I only see that on that page. The other stories I've heard are that he was introduced to the band as the new bass player in 1990. So after that, there is a lot of changes in the members, and once again, watch the video link below if you want to know all about who came and went. But by 1992, David Isberg also left, so that Michael was the last remaining member of the band from, going back to 1990. So basically he took over the band then and hired in new members. Now the important members to join, eventually he brought in Peter Lindgren on guitar, and Peter Lindgren would of course stay with the band right up to the Ghost Reveries album. Then also we got Johan de Farfalla on bass and Anders Norden on drums. So that is the lineup that came together to record the first album. And the first album was actually recorded in the spring of 1994, but due to distribution problems, it was not released until 1995. It was produced by Dan Swano, a big name in the music scene. And something interesting about this was that the band actually had, they were looking for a label, and Samoth from Emperor happened to include a few seconds, I don't know the story about this exactly why, but I read a few seconds of the song The Apostle in Triumph on a demo cassette of, I don't know, various artists, I'm not sure, which he sent to Candlelight Records. And hearing that, It was Barry Lee at Candlelight Records who thought, yeah, this band sounds really cool, let's get them signed. So, on the strength of a few seconds of The Apostle in Triumph, Opeth got signed to Candlelight Records. So anyway, the result of was their first effort was Orchid, and I've heard a lot of people express love for this album. I've heard also a lot of people say that this and the next one, or the first three albums, are nothing but crap. And excusing the band, saying, hey, a band's got to start somewhere, but they're crap. I think if you're used to albums like Blackwater Park and Ghost Reveries, or even their later progressive stuff, this is going to come as quite a shock. This is very, very different. It is, to my ears, more of a melodic black metal sound. Even the vocal style, to me, sounds more like a black metal growled shriek rather than a death metal bellowing growl, you know? The sound is also more higher tone and tinny in a way, which is, you know, also similar to a lot of black metal bands out there, as opposed to death metal bands who like to go for the, you know, lower tones usually. And even lyrically, the songs, I think in one song is I Will Forever Love You. I don't think death metal bands ever sing like that kind of thing. In a way, it could also even be some gothic type lyrics anyway. So we have tracks like In Mist She Was Standing, Under the Weeping Moon, Silhouette, Forest of October, The Twilight Is My Robe. These are not tracks you would normally, like track titles you would normally associate with a death metal band. So I'm going to say that this is a kind of what deafened the black metal. But another thing is that's very interesting is the chords, the riffs. The riffs of the songs, I feel sometimes are similar to Iron Maiden's more longer riffs, except that it's as if you change a couple of notes and change the guitar tone and turn it into a kind of melodic black metal dirge, as opposed to what an Iron Maiden song would sound like. Yeah, they introduced these longer riffs early on, not just straight up, you know, metal bar chord riffs. And of course, right from the get-go, we get these transitions into these acoustic parts. One of the things that catches my attention both on Orchid and Morningrise is the percussion and the bass. We hear a lot of very interesting, exciting percussion, also the use of hand percussion coming in, I think more so on Morningrise, and the bass is often very active and even featured as a kind of a lead instrument sometimes, which we can hear on, well, okay, I have to explain about this, but we can hear it at the beginning of The Apostle in Triumph. So a couple of things to point out as well. There's the song Silhouette, or rather the track Silhouette, which is very simply a piano solo played by the drummer. And it's just that while they were in the studio, they happened to mention to producer Dan Swano, hey, our drummer can play the piano, by the way. And he was surprised, and okay, it's not usual that drummers play the piano, but go ahead. And he did, and they said, you know what, we should make a track out of this. So that's how Silhouette came about. And then there is the track Requiem, which is actually an acoustic piece. And this is something now that needs mention, because Requiem is actually performed in two parts. There is the simpler acoustic guitar part, and then there's the more active part with the very busy bass guitar in there. And what happened was that the track splitting for the CD was incorrectly split. So Requiem's first part plays out, there's a pause, and then the more exciting part comes in, and then that finishes. And after that, The Apostle in Triumph should start. However, the split came in the middle of the two parts of Requiem. So you hear this acoustic guitar instrumental piece, and then you hear this more exciting, active, you know, fingers flying on the bass, acoustic guitar part, instrumental piece, but it sounds musically similar to the one that you just heard. And it kind of makes you think, so why would they have an instrumental guitar piece with acoustic guitar and then introduce, do an intro for the next song using a similar sounding piece, just more active? Why would they do that? And as I read, it's because the split went in the wrong spot. So actually, The Apostle in Triumph really begins with the drums, bass, and electric guitar. Anyway, go figure. Now, I also heard that there is a 2023 reissue of Orchid where the split is put in the right spot. So I don't know, does that mean I have to buy the album again? Anyway, all that said, I know a lot of people have singled out other tracks like Under the Weeping Moon as their favorite, or some of the other ones. My pick always has been The Apostle in Triumph, and the thing that probably very obviously makes it stand out from the other tracks is that section in the middle where they do the volume control adjustment on the guitar and make it sound like a violin. And I've heard that fairly often. You can hear it on the song Fools by Deep Purple from Fireball, in that middle part where it's this kind of slow, but Ritchie Blackmore is doing the volume control adjustment to make this, like, you know, slow weeping, I don't know, violin or viola sound. You can also hear it, I think, also on Scorpion's Lonesome Crow, and there are many other albums where people have done that. But here it's actually going very quickly. It sounds like this here. Yeah, like that just comes in as such a surprise, because this is the final track on the album. We have not heard them do anything like this up till then, and it just comes in, and I think it's just wonderful. So that immediately puts this song like at the top of my attention meter. And overall, I just do really like it anyway. It is, of course, the debut album. It is, you know, early Opeth, very primitive in some ways, but it is also quite a good song, I think. And in fact, when I tried to find a little more information about this song, I found a Reddit post where some people were saying that this is one of Opeth's best ever written songs. So that's obviously debatable, but I certainly pick it out as one of my favorites, at least from these early albums here. So next up, we take a look at Morningrise, the follow-up album, which was released on Candlelight Records on June 24th, 1996. And I should say that Century Black also released both of these albums in North America. I think there was actually a delay of several months with Orchid being released in North America. This one, I think I remember reading maybe only a day or so difference. So this is, what is it, a 5-track album? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, that's right. And all of the tracks exceed 10 minutes. And of course, this one has the famous Black Rose Immortal at 20 minutes and 14 seconds, Opeth's longest song ever. And in fact, I think it's their only song to exceed even 15 minutes. Most of their songs go between 7 and 12 or 13 minutes. So yeah, this is their big, you know, early on magnum opus, prog bit, just putting like everything all together into one mega long track. And some people also citing this as the best song ever, the best Opeth song, or, you know, one of the best. Listening to the album, I of course feel it does sound in many ways very similar to Orchid. We have the similar writing style, the long songs, the kind of dirge-like extended, you know, long riffs, the transitions to acoustic parts, which sometimes just seem to appear out of nowhere. It's like there's almost hard to detect the reason why it suddenly has to go acoustic. But, you know, they're still establishing their style and their sound at this time. And again, Michael Åkerfeldt is still singing with that, I feel, more of a black metal type screechy growl as opposed to the deep death metal growl that was to come very shortly after this. I think if I'm going to pick my favorite track, I probably would go with Black Rose Immortal, just because there is so much goodness in there. There is a little bit of everything that we've heard so far, except for that volume control violin type bit that was on the previous album. But otherwise, everything else is in here. And there are actually some more heavier parts. Like these early albums, I feel, even though they're metal albums, they're very melodic and sorrowful. Here on Black Rose Immortal, we actually do get some little bit darker, heavier parts. But I do want to cite the final track here, To Bid You Farewell, almost 11 minutes long. It has a very long part that is just acoustic guitar, and it is actually really beautiful, I think. In a way, it makes it a standout track from these first two albums, simply because the first 7 minutes or so are all done on acoustic guitar, and some very beautiful acoustic guitar playing it is. So, and of course clean vocals as well during that whole acoustic guitar part. It does finally wrap up the last couple of minutes with the kind of early Opeth standard dirge-like distorted guitar type thing, you know. But yeah, I want to mention that To Bid You Farewell as a almost them, almost vying for first position for me when I heard it again the other day, because it just sounded like something unlike anything else on these early albums. So basically by the end of Morningrise, I have some notes here that Aka felt grew tired of playing this style. He felt many other bands were trying to follow what Opeth were doing, particularly mixing the clean vocals and the growled vocals approach and counterpoint melodies, and so he really wanted to have some change in the band's sound. And I think actually one other thing I wanted to mention regarding the clean vocals. I have known Michael Åkerfeldt's clean vocals originally from Heritage, Pale Communion, and that sort of thing, and I always thought he was fine as a clean vocalist singer. In some ways he kind of almost reminds me of Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, not that his voice sounds the same, but just I feel his approach to singing is somewhat similar. However, in an interview I read with him, he said that early on, he really wasn't confident singing with clean vocals, and I think that is apparent on these first two albums here. He seems very timid with his clean vocal singing, sometimes not really giving it the energy or the power needed to hold the note. Even when he's singing softly, his voice seems to be almost about ready to break off that note there or whatever. But yeah, obviously from after Morningrise, I think his vocal technique, both in the growly side and the clean side, saw rapid improvements. So anyway, that's it for video number 3 on the catalog of Opeth and my picks for favorite tracks. Thank you for watching this one, and in the next one we're going to take a look at the next 3 albums that came after these 2. Alright, see you in that time. Thank you.